Hello and welcome to Better IELTS, our new series that will help us to improve our IELTS or TOEFL scores and, in fact, improve English skills in general. We will look at writing, reading, listening, speaking skills over the course of several videos. Today, in part 1, we will look at writing errors or writing mistakes, the 5 basic errors that should be avoided. We will identify the error by providing an example at first, naming the error, and then showing how to improve or to eliminate the error. And we will also understand the principle of good writing that will help us to avoid this error in future. I am sure that you are ready. So let's go and on to our first example. The student wrote, I think global warming is bad. Global warming makes pollution worse. Pollution kills people. It makes their lungs go bad. This lets them die. I'm sure when you read this with me, you will feel kind of bored that this is not the best thing you have ever read. And the reason that this gets boring so easily is because the writer made the mistake of using short sentences and simple words. It's like watching a movie in which not much happens. We can do it better. We can do it like this. Global warming is a threat to humans because it endangers their health. It does so by exacerbating the levels of pollution in the air, damaging the lungs of those who are exposed to it. This has potentially deadly effects. Much more interesting, I think, and more complex. And by the way, if you don't know the meaning of the word exacerbating, I would welcome you to also view the video series on improving your IELTS vocabulary. What is our principle here? Instead of using short, simple sentences and simple words, we should vary our writing. We should vary our writing, very much like a movie where we have a romantic moment, a peaceful moment, an action-filled moment, a suspenseful moment, and so on. Movies also vary the pace of the story that they tell us. Next example of a sentence is a question and an example. And the question is from the IELTS exam, perhaps. Do you agree that global warming is bad for us? What can be done about the situation? And the student answered, yes, I think it's bad. It must be fixed by the government. And again, I think you will agree that while the answer is not incorrect, it is not a very satisfying answer. The mistake that people make is they do not really answer the question completely. They do not spend time to understand the question and to answer it completely. Here is an example of how we can answer the question perhaps more completely. Since global warming has been linked to the death of the number of people and has been identified as the cause of environmental disasters, it is something that must be stopped. Now, from this sentence, we can see the answer to the first part of the question. And importantly, the author is telling us why they are arguing that global warming should be stopped. This why in our writing is actually a very important thing to keep in mind. Why do you say that? Second part of the sentence of the question is answered by this paragraph. Governments could take the lead by implementing strict pollution controls and by accelerating research into green energy. Answering the question by saying exactly what should be done to stop global warming. What is our principle for this mistake? The principle is that you should study the question carefully. Study the question carefully, spend some time understanding the question. I see this all too often in exams when students just look at the question, they just glance at it, and they start furiously writing as if they are afraid to run out of time too soon. You have enough time. understand and study the question very carefully. Our next sentence: the attempts by governments to mitigate the negative effects of global warming have been successful. Nevertheless, I agree with these approaches, but I find that they are right. Moreover, criticism is not fair. You may think at first reading that there is nothing wrong with the sentence, but I want you to look at the word nevertheless, but, and moreover. Perhaps the mistake that this author made was to misuse linking words, words linking one paragraph to another or linking one part of a sentence to another. Here is perhaps a more correct way of using linking words. The attempts by government to mitigate the negative effects of global warming have been successful. Moreover, I agree with these approaches and find that they are right. However, criticism is not fair, and so on. What is our principle here? Our principle is that we must know our language. We must know our language. Read, read, read. I cannot emphasize that enough. Reading gives us a feeling for how to use connecting words correctly. But this is something that we should focus on in our studies, understanding connecting words and how they function. The fourth example. I'm happy that this is not a mathematics video. I'm not a fan of the politicians who lie to us and those stupid people who don't trust science. It really cheeses me off. I wish we can all learn to follow facts. I think when you read this, you will immediately feel that the author of the sentence is very informal. All right, very informal. And the mistake that we sometimes make is that our writing style becomes too informal. A better way of writing this paragraph or these sentences: there are those who disregard science and allow their bias to muddy the waters, leading to heated debate by those following science and those who do not. I would argue for a more science-based approach to solving this problem. See that we can use a little bit of a personal pronoun, that's okay, but not too much and not too informally. The principle is that we should keep our language neutral, especially when we write an essay where we make an argument for or against something. Even if we feel very strongly about something, if we keep our language neutral, we can focus on the argument and not on the person. Fifth error today: governments should lead the way and civil society will precede. The flood damage was so bad they had to evaporate the city. Opponents say that global warming is just a figment of the imagination. If you pay attention in vocabulary, you will easily spot the three mistakes in this paragraph. And what is our error? Our error is that we use words we don't know well and then we use them incorrectly. This author, if we can go back for a second, this author used the words precede, evaporate, and pigment incorrectly. Here is the correct use of language. Governments should lead the way and civil society will proceed. The flood damage was so bad they had to evacuate the city. Opponents say that global warming is just a figment of the imagination. So again, we want to use big words, and it's a good idea to use big words because one of the principles we learned today is to vary our sentences and not only to use simple words, but we should use the words that we understand. Know your vocabulary and use the words you know, the words you are familiar with. Our conclusion today is that there are three words I think that's very important in preparing for IELTS, preparing for TOEFL, or just in general to improve your English. And that is to read, to learn, and to practice. Today, to summarize, we learned 5 things. We learned to vary our writing, to study a question carefully before answering it. To read, to read, to read. Reading immensely helps us to improve our English. We should use neutral language as far as possible, and we should build up a powerful vocabulary. And that's the end of today's video. Thank you very much for watching. If you liked this video, if you found it helpful, please hit the like button and please subscribe to this channel. I will update it quite regularly. And that's it for today. Thank you very much, and I hope you have a lovely day. Bye-bye.